Okay, so I wanted to do a couple things tonight, and we are in August already. I can't believe the summer's just about over and school's starting again for kids and young adults and teachers, and we begin a new season. And what I've decided to do is with regard to baptisms. Nothing different. I just wanted to just mention how um, typically the whole process of the catechumenate, which uh, includes the 3 months for those of you who have just come in to the faith or have at least been attending 3 months. That process typically takes about a year from the moment you walk into the church to the moment that you descend into the baptismal waters. Meaning that the 3 months you do, the 3 months is just attending church with your families, getting accustomed to Orthodox worship, getting comfortable with this new change in religious life and practice. And then after the third month, you know that you're officially made catechumens, and I like to mark that with a prayer, which I think I've read for most of you. And then that catechumenate typically will be between 6 to 9 months. I usually try to stay closer to 6 months, especially when it comes to families, because I know that, there's always that desire to be baptized together, certainly as a family. So basically, we're talking about a 9 month to 1 year period. Keep in mind, too, that in the ancient church, this whole period of catechism, of instruction before baptism, took on an average of 3 years. That was in fact, that was the minimum. That was the normal minimum for catechism. And it wasn't that they had to learn so many things. It was also to test them, to make sure, to test the catechumens, to make sure that they were committed to the faith. The church, as you know, then was under persecution. So it was important for people truly to make a commitment and to remain in that commitment. So again, we're talking 9 months to a year. What I've been doing is I've kind of been admitting catechumens to baptism or chrismation on a seasonal basis. In other words, our next batch or next group that will be baptized, right? I like to call you guys the graduates, will be in the fall. And then we've got the winter uh, group, and then we have the spring group. So by winter, I mean around Christmas or just after the holidays, around the Feast of Theophany, right? Which is January 6th in the church. So right after Christmas and still within the 12 days of Christmas. Um, and then winter time, so that's winter, and then spring would be around Easter. Lent, possibly during Lent, so you could spend your first Easter as an Orthodox Christian, or right at uh, Easter time, which would be Holy Saturday, and then the day after being Holy Pascha, Holy Easter. So that's kind of how I've set up the baptisms. Of course, the final decision is mine, having spoken with you and making sure that you're also comfortable. Um, to approach baptism, and when you're comfortable and I see that you're ready, then we will go ahead and set the date. Now, because we do everyone kind of as a group, I wish I could be able to, you know, do it individually for everyone, but that, as you know, can be difficult because I only come down once a week, and it's just more expedient to have everyone done at the same time. But it's also, I think, very meaningful because you get to be baptized together with the people that you met when you first came to the church. So I like to kind of do everyone together. It's just more practical. It's a lot easier than choosing individual kind of days. Like I want to do this Saturday, I want to do that Saturday, or that Sunday, or whatever. So we kind of do everyone as a group. Having said all that, so our next group is going to be in the fall, and we've chosen the date of October 18th. So that will be the next group. So the ones that I have in this group, um, and so the list that I have, these are I feel, these are everyone who came in about 9 months to a year ago and have stayed in the catechumenate. And so let me just read this list that I have for the fall. If for whatever reason you feel that, you know, you can't or you're not ready, just shoot me a private message for whatever reason, but I think you are ready. So let me go ahead and read the list. So I have first here Ariel um, for this fall. Then I've got I don't see Liam and Daphne on the call. I know Ian's here. He just came. So I have Liam and Daphne. I have Ian, um, Patrick, PW. I've spoken with Patrick already. So God willing, that'll happen. Um, Paul as well. So Patrick and Paul. Um, and I also have Courtney, Woody, and Matthew Woody. And I don't see them on the call tonight. No, I know they got the text. I mean the email. So those are that's the group that I currently have. Um, so one of there are a few things that we'll need to do. So with this group, one of those things, which is most important, of course, is to find a godparent if you haven't already. Your godparent is someone who it has to be an Orthodox Christian. It is someone who's um, doesn't have to be someone who's been Orthodox all their life. I mean, it could be someone who could be Orthodox maybe at least a year already. I think that's, a generally good amount of time to be Orthodox before becoming a sponsor. Someone that is committed to the faith, someone that you feel comfortable with, that you consider a good friend, someone that you believe can mentor you in the faith to guide you, because it is a lifelong commitment. It's a fellowship and it's a mentorship, right? So they become kind of your spiritual brother, in a sense, your spiritual father or spiritual mother. So it's someone your godparent is someone who will lead you into the Orthodox faith. Okay. Someone, again, that will be a good example for you. So there are a lot of good people in our community. As you know, it's growing. We have people coming from, good families and committed to Christ and to the church. And it would be wonderful for you to have someone in the community. Now, they don't necessarily have to be from St. Spiridon per se. If you know anyone that may be Orthodox that you may have known before coming to the church, and kept up with, and you feel more comfortable with an Orthodox Christian from outside of Saint Spiridon, right? They don't have to be Greek necessarily; they just need to be Orthodox and a committed Orthodox Christian. Um, that's perfectly fine. In which instance, if it's someone from outside of the church, then I will need to have a letter from their parish priest saying that because I probably won't know them, but I need to make sure that they are Orthodox. So their priest has to verify that, just a letter. We all do it for each other. If someone wants to be a sponsor elsewhere, and that they are in good standing with the church, meaning that, they receive communion and the sacraments regularly, right? They're not lapsed or anything like that. Uh, so, um, so that's the first item that is important. Hopefully, if you don't have officially or spoken to a godparent, please pray about it um, quickly because we're going to need to have someone in place by October 18th um, before you're baptized and or chrismated, right? But whether you're chrismated or baptized, you need a godparent. Okay. Secondly, if you were already baptized in the name of the Holy Trinity, right, then I will need a copy of your baptismal certificate. Right. So the copy of your baptismal certificate, if you were baptized in the Baptist Church, Methodist Church, I don't know, Lutheran Church, Catholic Church, I'll need a copy of your baptism. If you don't have a copy or your parents don't have a copy, you can request a letter from the pastor or the priest of that church saying that so and so was baptized in the name of the Holy Trinity. It must be a Trinitarian baptism. If you were baptized in the Unitarian Church or Seventh, I don't think anyone was, but I'm just saying certain churches do not have Trinitarian baptism, or they simply don't believe in the Holy Trinity. Seventh-day Adventists, Jehovah's Witnesses, what do you call it? Mormons, Unitarians, Universalists, that grouping. They're Pentecostals. And I think I've spoken with a couple of you that were kind of iffy. So I think we agreed on baptism, just regardless. So, and that practice of accepting another church's baptism in the name of the Holy Trinity, that is the default practice of the majority of the autocephalous churches in the Orthodox world. Now, there are some much more conservative churches or old calendar churches that do not accept baptisms in non-Orthodox Christian churches. And in which case, then they simply baptize you, or they call it just your baptism, your actual baptism. We would call it rebaptism. They don't see it as a rebaptism because they reject all the other baptisms. So that, not meaning to confuse you, that's with the old calendarists, but the official position of all of the patriarchal churches, of all the Orthodox churches that are in communion with each other, is you're simply chrismated and not baptized. So if you've never been baptized, you'll have to be baptized. Um, uh, Another thing too that you'll need to have, and I think many of you have already kind of gravitated towards a patron saint. It's important to have a patron saint in the church, someone that you feel close to, someone that you feel inspired by, that you've developed a an affinity to, someone you feel uh, comfortable that reflects your life, your struggles, perhaps. The saint doesn't have to match your name necessarily, right? Um, for example, I mean, I'm thinking of Joseph, right? Joseph Arnold took the name Maximus. He could have easily taken the name Joseph because there are a lot of St. Josephs in the Orthodox Church, but he preferred St. Maximus because St. Maximus spoke to him, spoke to his heart, to his mind, his writings. He was inspired by them. So that was the saint that he chose. The name isn't imposed on you. It's something you choose, but make sure you clear it with me because we don't want any. You cannot have the name of a saint that is after the schism. Okay. But if it's an Orthodox saint that is before the schism, before 1054, that's perfectly fine. But again, if you're kind of like preying on names and kind of like wondering what name should I choose, I can help you with that. we can come up with something. If your name happens to be, I'm just kind of looking here, you know, I, looking at Isaac here. I mean, there's a Saint Isaac, of course, from the Old Testament, but Isaac, you can choose, of course, to have another name. And that name basically, what that means is that your name doesn't change legally, okay? Nor do you add a middle name. That's simply your uh, Orthodox name. It's your sacramental name. So when you come up to receive communion, right, you'll say your Orthodox name, right? So the servant of God, Maximus, right? And just your first name. You don't say your last name, right? So you say your Orthodox name, and that's the name that you are known by within the church. So let me just also explain. You might find this interesting. Why is it that our names change when we enter the church? Let's say if we already have a legal name that our parents named us, right? So with cradle Orthodox, it's usually if the parents choose a name, they already have a saint in mind. But because the majority of the Orthodox world, I mean, the majority of the world that comes into Orthodoxy, they never think of a name being changed. So where does all that come from? Initially, it came from in the ancient church. You had names of, for example, in the Roman Empire names were chosen usually after deities, right? Or after a particular god of the pantheon or, demigods or whatever. And these names were chosen for the men, the women, the children. Because the church wanted to dissociate from the secular world, what it did and initially, you're going to say, well, how do Orthodox names become Orthodox? Well, a lot of these people who died had these pagan names, but they were made Orthodox. They became Christian, they were martyred, or whatever the case is. And so then people, rather than naming their children after the pagan names, they were naming their children after the martyrs because it was believed that by naming your child after a saint of the Orthodox Church, you also take on their graces, in other words, their gifts, their qualities, right? So you kind of receive special blessing if you feel particularly close to a saint. In time, of course, when the cult of saints, I use the term cult very loosely, when the cult of saints developed, you had people essentially having a smaller kind of box of saints that they would name each other after. And a lot of these names were Latin, a lot of them were Greek, a lot of them were Syrian, a lot of them were Egyptian, Armenian, depending upon what part of the world. And as Orthodoxy grew in all of these countries, the locals, the number of local saints also grew. So people then would choose from their local saints. So an Armenian Christian, for example, would choose an Armenian name. A Greek would choose a Greek name. A Roman would choose a Roman name, of that sort. If you were in Egypt, it was an Egyptian name, and so forth. So that's kind of why that happened. As the church progressed, a kind of a theological practice, if you will, developed. And that is that when a person enters into a new way of life, to mark that newness of life, one of the things that is done to the new person is that their hair is cut, is tonsured, not like completely, but just like a few locks from the hair. You've seen that before, right? In baptisms and chrismations. So the tonsure of the hair, and if you don't have, hair up top, we can always do the beard. We can take care of the beard. So some kind of facial hair. The reason that is done is to show that that individual dissociates from the world and enters into a new world. When a monk, for example, or a nun enters a monastery for the first time, when they're made a monk, a man or a woman becomes a monk or a nun, they're tonsured and they're given a new name. So their new name gives them a new identity in this new world, known as the church or known as the monastery. Okay. So a theology developed when people were taking on these new names, namely that they're giving up their worldly name because that identifies them in the world, and they take on a Christian name, which identifies them in the kingdom of God, right? Now, a lot of saints also retained their secular name, but also had their Christian name, right? I mean, you could be named something like Julius Flavius, da 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 da, Nicholas, right? Because there, especially when the people in the secular world didn't know you were a crypto Christian, you kept your secular name. Just like today, like, if you're named Maximus, still in your work, when you're working in the world, your name is Joseph, let's say. I'm just using Joseph here as an example. So, in the church we have that new identity, right? And so again, nothing changes on paper, just in the church that becomes your name. And again, it's a name of a saint that you feel close to, you feel inspired to have if you've read their writings or their work. It could be, you could do that. If you have a middle name, let's say your name is Butch, that's not an Orthodox name. Um, but let's say your middle name happens to be Michael. Oh, Butch Michael, I don't know, Weston. You can use Michael as your church name. Might, that might make it easier for some people. Like for a girl, like if your name is Vanessa Marie, let's say, I think there's a Saint Vanessa, but you can have Marie as your patron saint. That would be Mary, right? The Theotokos. You can have that as a name. Um, so anyway, so please, a couple things keep in mind. I see a hand up. Yep, and I'll get to that. So uh, start thinking of a baptismal name if you don't have one already, and please be sure that you have. This is your homework by our next meeting, which will be in September. That's going to be our final meeting before some of you will be baptized. Please make sure you have your godparent um, selected by then. Oriel had her hand up. Go ahead.
Hi, in regards to the October, um, I was wondering how whether we should fast leading up to our baptisms and for how long. Because I know the whole origin of Pascha of the Lenten fast was the catechumens fasting leading up to their baptism.
That's right, correct. So, yep, Oriel asks about the fasting. So, normally the Lenten, because in the early church, the only time that baptisms were done in the fourth century, before the development of Christmas and Theophany um, as days that baptisms were also done, catechumens experienced a 40-day fast. But since we're kind of choosing a kind of another season for baptisms that is not within a fasting period, what you could do as you're preparing for baptism is you can maintain, since the baptism will be on a Sunday, you can maintain a Wednesday, um, Wednesday and Friday fast because Wednesdays and Fridays are days of fasting. Saturday, you can fast lightly, meaning that, you probably want to avoid meat and dairy, have oil the night before, and then Sunday, nothing in the morning, unless you have to take medication, and then you would be able to receive communion, obviously, at the baptism, which would happen in the morning. So, for those of you in the fall, um, try to fast on Wednesday and Friday. Thursday is not a fast day, but Wednesday and Friday you may want to fast strictly, and then Saturday observe a light fast, meaning not heavy, meat and dairy. um, oil, and then nothing Sunday morning, and then you'll come to the baptism. And then after that, obviously, after communion, you're free to eat anything. Um, and the same would apply. Well, it kind of depends on the season. So the next group would be in the winter. So the winter is, if we do Christmas, there's already a fast in place. So we would be observing if it's a Saturday baptism, let's say, I'm just saying, I'm not saying when it's going to be, but if it's the Saturday, if it's before Christmas and we do the baptism on a Sunday, if it's um, let's say Christmas is the week after, it would be Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, because we are in a fasting period. For Lent, it would be the same thing. It would be we're fasting anyway during Lent. So leading up to Holy Saturday, it would be a fast every day leading up to it. Uh, are there any questions about anything I mentioned? I know might be a little premature for those of you who still have a ways to go, but at least you get a little bit of information that hopefully is helpful, and kind of does answer a few questions you probably will have later on.
I have a question, Father, partially related to baptism. Um, what is it? It would. What is your stance? This is something kind of personal, but just my
Yeah.
wife and I, we were married before we came back to the church, or before I came back to the church, and before she entered the church and the faith. And I was wondering if it was at all something you practice as I understand you could do a baptism and then a crowning service as a blessing to a marriage. And that's something I've been just wanting to do for a while is get remarried within a church um, under God and everything like that. So I was just
Okay.
curious of if that's something you would do.
So we can do it. It is according to the current canons in place of the church. It is not necessary, and the reason for that it's not necessary. It is optional. So I mean, we could do it if the couple wants it. And normally, if that's done, you're the one of the sponsors, either yours or Natalie's. Sponsor, because it would be two different people. Um, they would be your sponsor because you have to have an Orthodox sponsor at your wedding as well, at the crowning ceremony. The reason that it's not required is because, and this is where, again, you have a bit of not confusion, but it's a disagreement between the patriarchal Orthodox churches and the old calendarist churches. The patriarchal churches essentially say that when baptism takes place, uh, so ancestral sin, right, is wiped out. Individual sins up until that point, original sin is wiped out. And the church, because the church recognizes your marriage because you've already become consecrated within the church as Orthodox Christians. And as such, because you live under the same roof, there was some kind of a ceremony. It could have been a civil ceremony, it could have been something of that nature, where you are um, so the church will recognize that. It does not impose it. Now, the old calendarist churches will say, well, everything is null and void outside of the Orthodox Church. So you would be baptized, and then your marriage would be blessed in the church. The question usually comes up, Isaac, when sometimes people will say, well, okay, I mean, I'm married, but my marriage isn't blessed in the church, but I'm Orthodox, my wife is Orthodox, my kids are Orthodox. How can I receive communion? And usually with communion is when this question comes up. So can I receive communion even though my marriage isn't blessed? And the church there exercises what's called economy or dispensation. saying that it is okay, but it does not impose marriage. The old calendar churches that are stricter say, no, we don't, you have to have your marriage blessed, because they practice what is known as in Greek akrivia. Akrivia means exactitude. In other words, uh, it's the letter of the law says that you must be married, because the more conservatives will say outside of the church there is no grace, there is no um, there is no sanctification. Without wanting to confuse you more, this is debatable because I think all of you have kind of noticed already that within Orthodoxy, and we see the same in Catholicism as well, it's no different in the Roman Church. There are two fundamental strains of thought. There's the very conservative and then the very moderate kind of approaches to orthodoxy. Each of these strains of thought, they emphasize kind of different things. The conservatives emphasize the letter of the law. Those that are more moderate look at what the letter of the law says and practice more what is, or more moderate, they practice the spirit of the law. Okay. So the church, the Orthodox Church, simply leaves it up to the family. Weddings can get expensive. I mean, an Orthodox ceremony doesn't have to be expensive. You can have three people and the priest, and you just have a blessing, and it's done. So it's kind of left up to you. I would not impose that on anyone. If you feel inclined to have it, we can do the paperwork and get that ball rolling, and then we'll just choose a day and we do the blessing. It does not, whether you receive the sacrament of holy matrimony in the church or not, it does not change your status. In other words, you are not, um, if you become if you're baptized and then we find out, oh, you weren't, you're, oh yeah, but your marriage wasn't blessed. You're not excommunicated. You see the trickiness here, because you're baptized and chrismated in order to receive communion. So immediately the church opens her bosom up and allows you to receive the mysteries. But then is the church going to say, well, you're kind of in communion, but not fully? I mean, that's language that's dubious. It says, yeah, your marriage isn't blessed. So you can receive communion, but you really shouldn't until you have your marriage blessed. Those kinds of things are neo-Pharisaic, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah. Yeah.
So that's why the church doesn't impose it.
Yeah, I don't mean to make it seem as if, it's something that
Yeah,
we feel pressured to do. It's something that I would really um just want to do. That's
sure,
yeah.
sure. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, we can certainly tackle that. Up until the time that you're baptized. Obviously, you'll need to be baptized first and then married. But up until you're married, you can still receive the sacraments of the church. I just want you to know that it's not like you're not allowed if you don't come full circle and do the wedding as well. Now, if I was an old calendarist, um, not that I'd ever want to be, God forbid, but I would tell you something very different. I would say, oh, you know what? We should do the crowning and the baptism the same day, and then you can receive communion right after you're crowned. I mean, so, but that's not the case. But yeah, we can definitely do that.
Thank you, Father.
Yeah. Anyone else have any questions about godparents, names, baptism, scheduling, any of that stuff?
So
Ma- Yes, go ahead.
Natalie just wanted to make sure that, the same day the children would be received into the church with us as well.
Abs Absolutely, the whole family, like it was in the ancient church. No, what do we say? The Orthodox policy is no catechumen left behind. Everyone is baptized on the same day. Just for the benefit also well, for my benefit, when you know, please, if you know So the homework is this. Um, First of all, if you can, from now until the next meeting, which will be in the third week in September or the fourth week in September, um, I need to know by then, first of all, if this date, because this date is kind of set, it's going to be my weekend in Clarksburg, and I actually have a wedding that Saturday, so that's why we're choosing Sunday for the baptism. Please let me know that you're ready. Number one. Number two, let me know your name that you've chosen, and let me know who your godparents are, because between the next meeting, September and October 18th, I'm going to have a meeting with those of you who are being baptized on October 18th, together with your godparents, so we can discuss all the logistics, right? What's going to happen at the sacrament, what to expect, practical things, preparation for that. So that meeting is going to be very important, and I'd like to get that meeting done as as soon as right after, if possible, the September meeting, because I want everyone to have enough time to prepare and get the necessary things that they need and all that. And your godparents, because there are certain items, of course, those of you who are being baptized are going to need, like candles, the soap, baptismal cross. These are all things that the godparents are responsible for. I also have that list that I probably should email to you, those of you who will be baptized. Actually, you know what I'll do is I'll email it to everybody. If you don't have it already, it's a checklist of the things that you need and that your godparents need to have for the baptism. I created it with the idea that it would help future candidates for baptism to prepare. So I'll send that to everybody so that you have that checklist. So we'll have to have again that. So another two meetings, September, and then right after the September meeting, just those of you being baptized with your godparents to do the logistics for the October 18th baptism. Oriel has her hand up.
This is actually something I wanted to bring up, Father.
It's Josiah.
Yes, yeah, I'm decided to join them today, but I don't know if you got in contact with Gino. You remember Gino Saruk? He's
Hmm.
the 10. Um, did he end up texting you? I think I gave him your number. Um,
He didn't. No.
okay, he's been very busy. He wants to come back to the church, but he's got some family problems he's dealing with his adopted kids that he's got from his wife's cousin. So
Mhm.
he's adopted. I think he's adopted three girls so far, but he's got a lot on his plate right now, and he doesn't have. And if you could, I don't know if you'd be able to be able to. I don't know if you have his number. I think I could send it to you. Reach out to him to try and get something worked out because he hasn't been able to attend in a very long time. I think he attended maybe about 6 months ago, came like once,
Yeah.
but he kind of explained the situation a little bit with me. And then I saw him during the week, this past week, and I was talking to him about it. But he wants to come
Mhm.
back, but he's just because I knew he was a catechumen, and then he wasn't able to, continue that because he wasn't able to attend because he got
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
going.
I have him down as an inquirer because I know he started coming. He came few weeks, but then I know he shared with me too that he had some family issues. So yeah, I'll definitely reach out to him. Yeah, if you wouldn't mind sending me, I have his messenger. I usually contact him through Messenger, but if you want to send me his cell number,
Yeah, I could do that. I'll probably call him here after a bit and see what's going on. But he texted me
yeah.
this morning about some stuff about work, but
Okay.
been in
Yeah,
contact.
I think what we'll do is I'll just put him back on the list, but he would have to be
Yeah,
later. It would have to be later because he's missed
he's
a lot
having
of the.
problems trying to like work his schedule out because um, one of the girls, I don't know what the mom was doing while she was pregnant with the girl, but she has some mental problems, and she doesn't really stay quiet uh, during the service. He would say like it would be impossible to kind of like have her in a setting like that. So he's trying to figure out ways to kind of work that out. But
Okay,
I know
fair
so
enough.
we got some kids. I mean, I don't mind it. You know, we got some loud kids at church, but he kind of feels it's kind of out of place sometimes.
Okay.
Especially during maybe a homily. You're like, I don't know, but
Yeah, no, I sure that's not a problem. I've actually in one of my parishes, I remember I was giving a homily once, and a kid just ran right up at me and jumped into my arms, and I just held the kid and just gave the sermon. I just kept giving the sermon. So I'm very used to doing that. Well, I mean, I'm not very used to doing that, but if I have to, I will. I mean, really, noise doesn't bother me.
yeah.
Especially when the Holy Spirit is speaking. And like I said, you all know I have no idea what I'm going to say when I walk out, and then the Holy Spirit just takes over. So it's all good. Yeah, you send me his number.
And
I'll.
um, I know some of this information is important for Liam. I don't know why he's not here tonight, but I did talk to him yesterday. Ian's in here. We talked to him.
Yep.
He's having some problems as well. I'm not going to necessarily talk
Okay.
about it,
Okay. Okay. Yeah. I mean, like I said, I mean, um, hopefully, I'll reach out and just kind of make sure. But please, those of you who are uh, ready, let me know that you're ready and give me your if you have your saint's name and who your godparent will be, that's important. And if I don't hear from you, then I'll be reaching out and saying, okay, are you ready? And I need this info. So it's all good. It's all good. All right. Any other questions before this was important? So I'm kind of happy we talked about that. Everyone's good with that? Okay. Let's go ahead and um, so I wanted to just do a very kind of short presentation on one aspect, a couple of aspects actually of Orthodox life, and then maybe talk about them. And this is just very practical stuff, so nothing high theology here. And then, allow you all to ask questions that you might have. So, one of the practices that we do when we come into the church, right? As we walk into the church, we cross ourselves. And crossing ourselves again is a way of blessing ourselves. And as we walk into the church, right, the first thing that we normally do is either if we're inclined to make our donation, make a donation in the tray and then take our candle or candles and then light them and then put them in the sand. And then as we light our candle to say a prayer for either ourselves or anyone that we want to pray for, especially that day during the liturgy. It could be someone who's living, someone who's deceased. They do not need to be Orthodox. I know a lot of us have a lot of people in mind that we know are struggling with different things. And we want, as we come into the church, to be embraced by God in his arms. We want to bring those people to be embraced as well. So the candle, because of the light, because of the flame, it's kind of like a life force, so we're bringing that person that we're thinking about that we want to pray for, that life force, we're bringing that person to the Lord and asking the Lord to take care of him or her, right? So that's important that we light that candle and have in mind that person we especially want to pray for. And then, we go to the icons, as you know, and we venerate the icons. I think we talked about this maybe the last time. When you're venerating the icons, right, you do want to cross yourself at least once, right? And then venerate the icon. Normally, we kiss the hand of the saint that is on the icon, or if it's a full body, we can kiss their feet, depending, what kind of pose they're in. If it's a feast icon with either Christ or the Theotokos, we naturally would kiss Christ or the Theotokos. You want to avoid kissing them on the lips. some people do it, and I know of course, it's out of respect, but it might sometimes be misconstrued. And the way people used to know that that was happening was usually with women if they had lipstick and there was like a big, smooch right on the lips of the saint. So, and when they would come up and clean it, clean the icon afterwards, or they, wipe it down. So you want to kind of keep that in mind as you're venerating the icon. If you're inclined, it's also a good practice to bow before the icon out of respect. Uh, or you might want to make a prostration, which means you bring your hand all the way down to the floor, and then as you come up, you make your cross. This is very practical Orthodox theology, sorry, Orthodox spirituality, that we venerate each person, we venerate each saint, and in fact, this practice is common even, we don't do it in the world, in the parishes, but in monasteries, you'll find that it gets to the point where monks, when they greet each other, before they actually hug, they will do a prostration before each other. It doesn't matter if they're younger or older, but they kind of prostrate themselves and then they try to grab the hand of the person that they prostrated. Now, sometimes they both do it at the same time, which means they almost wind up bumping their heads. But again, it's a sign of respect. And, the action itself, I know, is very odd for many of us because we don't do that in the secular world. We're just used to a handshake. But it's a sign of honor and respect. And as we venerate a religious image, we also venerate each other because we are living icons, right? We're not, our icons, our image is not on any poster or on any wood or mosaic, but we are called to holiness. Remember, even in Scripture, St. Paul is very clear when he says, "Do you not know that you are the temples of the living God?" So, as we show respect and honor to a church, when we walk into the Orthodox Church, for example, and we see all of the saints, we see the altar in front of us, we feel and sense the presence of God, we should feel and sense the presence of God in each other. That's the kind of respect and honor that the church gives. Again, it's a very different mentality, different way of doing things than what we normally do in the world. And I know for many that the veneration of saints is new. It could be different. Sometimes it can be even uncomfortable for people, and you're not imposed to do it. It's not imposed upon you. You're not forced to do it, but it is a sign of developing that sense of respect and honor towards the other person, right? You'll see also with regard to clergy, right? Now, normally, when I'm outside, if whether I'm wearing my clerical um, uh, clothes or not, people aren't used to kissing the hand of the priest, especially outside. It's if you're not Orthodox, people just don't understand that. But what do? We shake hands, right? And that's a sign of respect. That's a sign of trust, of agreement, right? Of mutual support. We all kind of shake hands. It's our way of saying, by the way, do you know where the handshake came from? It's kind of interesting. I was reading an article about it today. When people in the ancient world would shake hands, if their hand was empty, it meant that they were there for the cause of peace. Because normally, what did men hold in their hands? Weapons, right? A knife, a dagger, a sword. So if they weren't holding anything, then that was a sure sign that they were coming in peace to greet you. So, that's why we kind of shake hands with each other. So we don't actually and as far as kissing the hand of the priest, well, I'll get back to that here in a moment. Let's see, Ian raised his hand. Ian, go ahead.
Also with the is my mic working?
Yeah,
Ooh. Okay, it's working. Okay, it wasn't showing up saying that it was coming through on my
no, you're good.
computer. Yeah, the part of the reason it was also a shake, was it was actually a lot less gentle than we shake hands now. It was to try to dislodge any hidden weapons up sleeves.
Yes, thank you. That is true, especially in the medieval world when people would wear longer sleeves, and it was very easy to conceal weapons or daggers of sorts to kind of free them from that. Yep. So, with regard to the to kissing the hand of the priest, again, it is traditional, it is customary to do that. Um, why do we kiss the hand of a member of the clergy, the deacon, the priest, or the bishop? So, the main reason is because the hand of the priest essentially handles the holy bread and the holy chalice. In other words, when we celebrate the divine liturgy, the priest will touch the bread, he will touch the chalice, and on behalf of the church, he will offer the blessing and the consecration prayers, right? The priest is not a magician, certainly. He doesn't have any power whatsoever aside from the church that he serves, because all the power comes from God, including the lay people. All of you have power from God when you are baptized and chrismated. You receive the fullness, the seal of the gift of the Holy Spirit. That means, again, that because the priest is handling the gifts in his hand, and because he is also the one who supplies the spiritual nourishment through the sacraments of the church, the priest is given that show of respect. So when people greet the priest, normally they will either ask for a blessing, they could kiss his hand, which is more common amongst the Greek, more so amongst the Greek-speaking churches. Sometimes they'll also ask for a blessing. So they might say, like, Father, bless. And then the priest will just make the sign of the cross with his right hand over their hand, kind of like what you see me doing on Sunday when the choir people come up, they receive a blessing uh, for that. This practice was actually, it's not a Greek practice per se. It's actually a very ancient practice that it was Semitic in ancient Semitic cultures, Jewish culture, Arabic, Bohairic, Sahidic, sorry. Um, uh, to kiss someone's hand was a sign of respect for their age. I remember growing up as a young boy, one of the things that we were taught was before we would go for communion, we'd go to like the head of the family, like usually our dad, and we would kiss his hand, or our godmother, or our godfather, and kiss their hand before going up to receive communion. By kissing their hand, you're asking for forgiveness, or you're asking, when you go to a priest, you're asking him for a blessing to do something. Like, for example, you'll say, Father, we have, could you please say a prayer for so and so? And then, you ask him for that, and then he'll give you a blessing. Or if you want permission to do something, you'll say, Father, do I have your permission? Do I have your blessing to go forward with something? That again shows that the priest is also the father of the community. He administers the community, but he's also the one who feeds, the one who nourishes, the one who teaches. He's kind of like what a parent is, but on a larger scale, kind of like a spiritual parent, right? Um, it is, like I said, it is the custom to venerate, to kiss the hand of the priest. It is not imposed. In other words, uh, uh, the priest is wrong. This really wouldn't matter to you because you're all lay people, but the priest is wrong when sometimes you see some priests, they stick their hand out to the person to kiss their hand, which I think is very rude and disrespectful to the lay person. because that simply shows kind of a haughtiness. It doesn't show humility at all. Um, you know, my style is usually I like to hug people, and that just shows because I feel myself that I'm on the same level as all of you, right? I mean, I am your priest. I don't have to prove it. I've earned that title because, I'm here for you, and I know my place before you, and I don't take advantage of that. In church, outside, you can do that if you so wish. If you want a blessing, you ask for a blessing, I give you a blessing. Um, but if you just want a hug, I can do hugs too. If you want a fist bump, I can do a fist bump. It's not imposed. It should never be imposed, but it is customary in the Orthodox Church to ask for a blessing from the priest to do that. It is also customary to do it for the bishop if the bishop comes, and also for a deacon, right? For a deacon, a male deacon, because he also handles the holy bread, Holy Communion. He distributes Holy Communion, right? So this is kind of reflective of a part of the world that some of us grew up in, many of us did not, where the father and the mother, uh, because they fed their families, they were shown that extra ounce of respect by having the hands that do this benevolence, that do this philanthropy. Their hands are venerated out of respect for them. When people died in the ancient church, when a person was laid out and then in 24 hours they needed to bury the body, um, normally, if it was a parent, the person that was laid out, they would kiss their forehead, they would kiss their lips, they would kiss their cheeks, the hands, the feet. I mean, it got, the maybe overkill for by our standards, but the idea was that there was a respect that was shown for everything the person did in walking to help, in doing good works with their hands, and looking after us. So kissing the eyes, the ears, kissing the ears because they listened to our pain and comforted us in our time of need. So all of these are examples of honoring the person doing this. So I just wanted to give you bit of that, a little bit of that kind of context, so you can understand where all this kissiness, right, comes from within the church. As you know, and as you've read, the church is very tactile, so there's a lot of touching, a lot of um, movement, and it's simply, why is it called not a religion but a way of life? It's because it's a different way of thinking. It's a different way of behaving. It's a different way of looking at the world entirely. It doesn't reject the world at all. It just looks at the world and tries to put God in the middle, right? It says, yeah, like you look out at nature and you see how beautiful the trees are. There's a sanctity to the trees, to the living creatures, to the worms, to the bugs, even though we don't like bugs around us and all that. But there's a sacredness even within nature. We even read in the book of Psalms, right? The heavens declare the glory of God. In the hymn of the three youths from the Old Testament, we see that so much of nature, all of nature gives praise to the Lord. Fire, ice, snow, rain, everything that God brings into this world ultimately looks back up to him in thanksgiving. So it doesn't reject science whatsoever, but it places God in the middle as kind of the provider, the creator, the one who stands and gives us the proper perspective so that we can take care of this world as well. We can be stewards of this world and respect each other. So I said a lot of things here, but that's what I wanted you all to hopefully, kind of digest here is that um, there's a very different mindset in the church, and it's one that is God-centered, and God is everywhere. And we treat the world through simple actions as we would treat God if he was right in fact in front of us. So, are there any questions about anything I said, or anyone want to add anything?
I was just saying it was funny. I've been uh reading this fictional book based in kind of like a medieval structure, and just I kind of it made me think like I kind of miss the days, even though I never was there to experience them. I just kind of miss the days of like greeting people with, like true respect, with bowing, curtsies, all that kind of stuff. Like
Mhm.
just I wish that more youth were taught how to, greet uh elderly and adults in that manner. I wish it was just more widely taught.
Yeah. You go to Asian cultures, thinking Japan specifically. My daughter tells me because she's into everything Japanese, and she says that bowing and bowing properly, because sometimes if the bow, she says, is if it's too much, if the incline is too much, it's offensive. But there's a lot of that show of respect and honor given, especially towards the elderly. Even like when you talk to them, you like if you're speaking to someone older than you, there's a certain kind of there's a certain word for it. Like if someone's older than you speak to them by using a certain word, respectful word. If it's someone else, if it's someone who's younger, who's your age, there's a second word for that. If you're speaking to someone younger than you, there's another word for that. So, the one word I do know, only because I own it, is Nissan, a car. Nissan means older brother, older brother. So I forget what my daughter said is younger brother, but Nissan is like older brother. Anyway, Oriel has her hand up, or Josiah. Go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to add about the veneration of other people and icons. It it really is. I don't know if you guys listen to Father Stephen DeYoung very much, but he talks about veneration of icons and how that links to Trinitarian theology, and how the veneration of the image or the worship of the image is goes to the prototype.
Yep.
Um, in the veneration of other people, because we all have the image of God, we're all created. The dignity that we have is because we have the image, and that respect that's given is then passed on to the Trinity. So when
Yep.
you reject iconography, you're actually rejecting human dignity, because that's what we are. We're made in the image of God.
Exactly.
We're created. So if you're going to say that we can't have a created image of God, well, then you're rejecting human dignity. What it says right there in Genesis.
And also the incarnation.
Yeah, and the incarnation as well. So because Christ
That's
was
exactly right.
in a created body. So, but I just kind
Yep.
of
Yeah,
it,
yeah, that's
yeah.
very helpful. No, that's exactly right. And in fact, Father Stephen DeYoung has also he's got a few books out. He also has a really good book called, I think, The Church of the Apostles, which I think talks about the how the life of the church within the first century, and how the apostles lived and worshipped and uh, during that initial time of the church. But yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, everything is conveyed to the prototype, and as we are the image of God as well, that's why, like, if you speak ill of someone, it's like you're speaking ill of God, because uh, clearly, as St. Paul says, I said earlier too, we are temples of the Holy Spirit, right? So a desecration of a human being is a desecration of God. It's a form of disrespect that we can call any form of violence. The Orthodox Church will teach is what do they call it? It's not just defamation. What's the word when you? It's a defilement of another person. So yeah, we need to honor each other, definitely. Yeah, go ahead.
It's called the Religion of the Apostles.
Yeah,
That actually leads towards a different question that I had, like learning about some of the implications that death has on the world, some of the things it can lead to, and also just, trying to get into the phronema of the church. I've been starting to feel more and more convicted about like killing household pests. And like, I don't know, it's it's something, it's this kind of necessity of life to where like you can't get rid of them almost any other way. And also I'm not living in my own house at the time, but I'm just like, you know, something has to be done, and a lot of times it falls to me to do the job, and it's like, ugh, I don't know. Is it I'm just kind of wanting to know
sure.
uh what the stance is on that. Like, are we complete Buddhists to where can't can't kill a single fly, or what is
No,
it?
right. No, no, no. My daughter and I have had this conversation before. So, as we speak, um, all of us are murdering right now bacteria inside of us, right? And they're living organisms. When we digest certain foods, certain bacteria thrive, others don't, that kind of thing. So, do we, in doing that, in having to, kill certain pests that can make a situation for us in our homes unclean or uncomfortable or, cause us to get sick because usually critters and animals like that are dirty because they roam around outside and they pick up other bacteria and so on and so forth. I mean, you know where I'm going with that. So is it right, to do that? I look at it this way because we're there needs to be some kind of a balance in the ecosystem. But from the very beginning of time, if you think about it scientifically, we were, I don't want to say, we were, the process of death was going on, goes on, has been going on since the very beginning of time, right? Because there has to be some kind of a balance happening, right? There's bacteria that is living and then it's killed because it has to be because of this, and that. The question is, and so what does the church say? The church will say this, uh, do we have a relationship with that bacteria? Do we have a relationship, let's say, with that bug or whatever, right? The answer is no. Do we have hatred toward the bacteria that's inside of us that we're destroying right now as we speak? No. Um, what happens to that? Do the bad bacteria go to heaven, or what goes on, right? I mean, these are questions, right? Um, the way the church says is like God takes care of everything, as there is a resurrection for those of us created in His image and likeness. God takes care of all of those animals that are killed for our sake. In other words, for to feed us, the chickens we eat or the hamburgers we eat and all of that, you know, when they die, and there are, of course, activists who don't want to see that happening, but when, you know, because it shows cruelty to animals, but yet it happens. Does God, now if you take God out of the picture, then it's clearly something seen as cruelty, but does God take care of them? In other words, in the afterlife, in his own wisdom. And the church will say somehow, in his own wisdom, in his own way, he does watch over them. We tend to focus, I think, a lot on what goes on in this life, that this life has to have a perfect ecosystem. It has to have a perfect balance where there's no, you know, death going on, at all on any level. I mean, just was it last week they cut down because some of the trees in our neighborhood here where we live in Pittsburgh, they're diseased. So the city came by and they said, we have to cut these trees. And in a way, I was saddened, my wife too, because these are trees that we had since we moved here, and are these living, living things? Of course they are. Yet God is going somehow to take care of that living creature. Does it affect us so much? Like when they cut my tree down, did I cry? Well, I didn't, neither did my wife. So I think a lot of times we spend, and I'm not dodging the question at all, I think we spend too much time wondering, wanting to have a perfect system of life in this world, and we know that we can't do that. And if we have to terminate the life of a mouse that we catch or something, or, a mosquito that, hit, is trying to survive, so it's, biting us, and we happen to kill it because we're trying to, we don't want germs or whatever. God is going to take care of that. God will take care of the imperfections of this world because there is an afterlife. There is an afterlife for all of God's creatures. And we're not going to be judged, but we may be judged. The judgment may be if we have absolute hatred and despise God's creation and say, darn it, why did God create these stupid mosquitoes? And we might say that when we kill it on our arm because it bit us or a bee or whatever. Um, but the judgment comes if there is hatred towards God for creating those things because we are more important, we feel ourselves to be more important than those things. There should be no hatred towards God's, green earth, towards the planet, right? But God, in his own wisdom, will take care of them. I often use the same kind of response, as difficult as it is, of all the tragedies that have happened in the world. And we know there are a lot. We know billions and billions of people since the beginning of the world have died unfairly. Many have been murdered. Many have been tortured. And we grieve for all of this. And we seek a world where this will not happen again. But as long as we live in this world, and as long as people don't see that image, that divine image of God in each other, this stuff will continue. What does our faith tell us? It tells us that as hurtful and harmful as all these actions of bad people go, God is still going to take care of everyone. How many of you have seen the movie Paul, Apostle of Christ with Jim Caviezel? We have it at the church. It's a DVD. If anyone wants, it's just let me know and I can give you the movie. At the very end, it shows Paul being beheaded in Rome. I'm not going to tell you the whole story. I mean, I'm going to tell you the story because it's a tearjerker. It's a beautiful movie, very accurate to scripture, very accurate, quite accurate, I should say, quite accurate to scripture. But at the end, it shows Paul in heaven. It's the very last scene of the movie. After he dies, he goes to heaven, of course, right? We kind of expect that. So he goes to heaven, and who is there in heaven? So he sees Jesus kind of walking over the meadow. It's a very Catholic kind of thing, view. But he sees Jesus walking over the meadow, and then guess what? Guess who he sees around him coming towards him, and they embrace him? All the people that he killed when he persecuted the Church of Christ. Saint Stephen, the first martyr, walks up to him and hugs him. Paul used a rock and he had thrown it at Stephen remember, Stephen was stoned in Jerusalem, and Paul was part of that persecution, that drive. And it shows Stephen embracing him. It shows the children that he killed, the ones that he convicted. All of these people that died, that were the first Christian martyrs, they walk up to Paul and they embrace him, and he embraces them. And then he looks to Christ, and it's a reconciliation. the likes of which we can never understand in this world. Where what we read is, remember in Scripture we read where the lamb and the lion lie down together?
Questions you have.
This is exactly kind of the idea is that God in the kingdom of heaven has made everything right. So that mosquito we killed or that mouse our cat caught and brought it to us as a gift. I mean, all of those things, everything is reconcilable within the kingdom of God, as long as we honor and respect those things that are around us. Um, and so it hurts to hear that, especially when you know the person you love isn't going to come back to you in this life. But our faith assures us that there will be a reunion and everything will be made normal again. In other words, I shouldn't say normal as we think normal, but everything will be made, I shouldn't say normal, everything will be made right according to God's will. And then in the kingdom of God, everything, God will be all in all, so that there will never again be a separation. And that is, in a sense, theosis, where we have no more needs, but God is one with us and we are one with him. Not in the Buddhist sense, right? But as having attained the fullness of the divine image. Maybe not the answer you expected, but there's just know in your heart that God makes everything right. Everything. Have faith, and that will become even clearer in the afterlife. But we cannot prove it here in this life. We have enough to know that that is the case, and our faith is what keeps us thirsting for that time when everything will be made right.
Thank you, Father.
Maybe another question. Actually, almost time for us to stop, but maybe one more question if anyone would like to ask, or any comments you'd like to make.
So I had a question about Mary and like the ontology or lack thereof of sin. Because like it's it seems like okay, so in Orthodox faith, sin has no ontology, it has no existence. But then the way we treat
Well,
things is
you
like
mean maybe hold on, you mean maybe evil, not sin. Sin is a condition that a transgression can create,
I
uh,
was
or or
told
or it can bring a transgression.
I was told that sin is an act of the will more so than anything like of a sort of substance. You know what I mean?
The sin can a transgression can lead to a condition of sin, a habit, but a sin can also bring about a transgression that further creates the sin. Remember, sin is a kind of sin is our absence, kind of our moving away from God and building habits around that moving away that makes it harder for us to come back to Him and to come back to our real selves.
mm.
With the ontology of sin and Mary, are you referring to so so
with her dormition, it
hmm,
was I was just like kind of why did she have to die if she was sinless, if she was the most pure person? I was just wondering if you could
yep,
kind of flesh
sure.
out the Mariology there, because like with Roman Catholics, they don't think she died at all. um,
Right. So there's a different Mariological emphasis between the Roman Catholic Church and the Orthodox Church. So with Mary, we know that she was born as all human beings coming into the world with original sin. She came into the world as someone also who inherited original sin and the consequences of original sin. The consequences, the most common consequence is death. So that's we believe that she died. Had Mary not died, which is the kind of she was kind of assumed right into heaven. Although the Catholic Church does they've kind of tweaked their doctrine to talk about there actually being some form of death, that they interchange assumption, being assumed into heaven, with death. So there's that's kind of a back and forth debatable issue with them. With us, it's very clear that she died. If she did not die, then what that would show is that Christ himself would not need to have come, because Mary in herself is able to transpose then all of those who died, as it were. But let me back up here uh, to explain it a little better. So Mary, did Mary have any personal sin? So there's a distinction made between the inheriting um, what do you call it? Ancestral sin and having personal sins. She did inherit ancestral sin, which made her able to die, right? So she became, she's mortal, like everyone is. Um, if Christ himself, who is the Son of God, right, who's the second nature, I mean, the second person of the Holy Trinity, assumed human nature, if Christ himself died and Mary didn't, isn't that isn't that problematic? Think about it. It would be hugely problematic, because then Mary is would then, I mean, if there's no sin in Mary, then that immediately makes her God. So Christ would simply be coming in through a spiritual vessel that upsets the balance of the Trinity, where there's no Trinity anymore. There's like Mary, who's like the female, so to speak, version of the transcendent God, which is impossible. And then Christ would simply have gone through Mary as a kind of a spiritual force, which is what the Gnostics believe, not about Mary, but about Christ being an emanation, being some kind of a power or source, an eon, some call it, where he comes in and then there's no incarnation, the body and the material world continue to be evil, etc. But because she died a physical death, she essentially, what the church does teach is that she forgoes judgment. Why does she forgo judgment? Because her death, her physical death, essentially creates this trajectory that she goes to Hades as Christ did, because she needed to follow the path that Christ set for the human race. And so her descent into Hades is an immediate resurrection, and then she immediately is assumed, meaning she's led into heaven, and she sits. She's rejoined with her son, and then her place in heaven is to the right of the glory of God, to the right of Christ's throne. And then on the other side, usually you see the icon of St. John the Baptist. So both of them are extending their hands in prayer to Christ for the world. So Mary receives. So let's look at it this way: she forgoes and she has ancestral sin, so she is receives the consequences of that, which is death, like everyone does. She forgoes judgment because she is the mother of God. And up until that time, the church teaches any kind of personal faults. We wouldn't call them sins, because she lived from the very beginning. Remember, she was brought into the temple, and so she lived with the temple virgins there. Any kind of small faults. I mean, she was still a woman, she still had her own, way of doing things. And, any small faults of that sort were immediately wiped out at her Annunciation, when she receives the calling from the archangel to become the mother of God. So she receives that kind of intensely purifies her. And then from that point on, right, she becomes officially the Theotokos. She becomes the one who will have Christ in her womb for 9 months and then give him birth. And then from that time forward, she becomes the most important kind of person within the church, as we kind of said. Um, but she forgoes the judgment uh, because she was already sanctified even of those petty, minor little faults that she may have had, as a young girl. After the age of reason, 7, 8, she gets to that point, and then all of that is kind of wiped out when she becomes fully sanctified at her renunciation. She still remains human, but kind of the perfect human, if you will, the one who still has a will, like all of us do, but it's so kind of entwined with the will of God that she is the uh, the absolute example for us to emulate. So it's problematic to say that, she didn't die, because that immediately then elevates her to a much higher status. There was, I think, a time too that the Catholic Church called her um, the mediatrix of all graces, kind of, uh, she's kind of elevated to almost godly status, but not God by nature. And then, she can intercede for everyone, and she and Christ are basically on the same level. But again, that's very problematic, because if she didn't die, how is she given all these graces by the one who did die? I mean, it's something is very off there, theologically very off. So she did die, but she retains her motherly connection and becomes uh, um, the best example of a human being. The closest a human can get to God is through her, is her. She's the absolute example for humanity. And remember, in the book of in the Quran, she's mentioned more than any other woman in that book, more than Muhammad's wives.
Yeah, I was just kind of trying to solidify some of my ideas about that. Just learning more about her is like her different epithets, like the champion general, like
Oh
some
yeah.
of the cooler ones. Um, and
Le-
yeah, I was also just kind of trying to
uh-huh.
solidify, um, because learning about uh just some of the reasonings. I've been watching Father Stephen DeYoung, like his talks on a lot of the Levitical stuff, which is what really excites me about coming into the Orthodox Church, because it actually looks like a lot of the stuff in in the Old Testament. But just talking about some of the reasons behind some ceremonies for blessings and cleansings, and like well, we don't sprinkle blood anymore, or we sprinkle holy water. But it's like it's because blood is life stuff, and we're cleansing away the death stuff, that which is the taint that sin leaves on things. Uh,
Right. And also blood is a symbol of life. And in fact, I finished we had a book club this past summer on one of my colleagues' books that she wrote called Church of Our Granddaughters. And I basically led the book club for the third chapter, which was on churching. And one of the arguments often made when a woman has an issue of blood or period, or when she, let's say she gives birth and then she comes in to receive the churching prayers, there's a lot of language that has to be changed, was my argument, and many agree. This idea of purifying, asking God to purify her, because there's an issue of blood, and blood is meant to be unclean and all this, and yet the it's actually the contrary. Blood is a symbol of life, and in fact, there was a Jewish rabbi who made the case. Interestingly, I don't know what his stance was on purification rites, but the issue was that what do you call it? Uh, a woman is when she has given birth, she is actually set aside, meaning she doesn't come back to the church or she's separated from society because she's been elevated to the status of life giver. She becomes a co-creator with God because she has given life within her body to another human being. And rather than kind of looking at her as having an issue of blood and being unclean and ritually impure, she's actually placed herself above the rest of society because she's given society the gift that they've always wanted, which is a new life. So there's a very different kind of view regarding that. And so I essentially make the case that we've got it all wrong as far as the purification rites go. And I've been an advocate and have been now for many years. And my place on the synod as the editor for liturgical texts for the entire country is that we need to change these prayers. These prayers, and some have begun changing them. Some jurisdictions, but we really need to have the entire Orthodox Church, especially in America when we're translating these prayers into English from the original language, Slavonic or Greek. We have to get away from this foolish Levitical language, which doesn't hold water anymore because the age of grace has come. The age of the law has ended. We have to get away from this. And anyway, there's a lot of agreement, with that, but there has to be a concerted effort to put together these prayers and then have them accepted by the bishops so that they become standard practice. So yeah. Anyway, I see. Yes, Patrick. Patrick, I think, has his hand up, or Brittany. And his will be the last comment or question.
Can you guys see me?
Yes.
I just wanted to answer, if it's okay with you, Father Ariel's first question about Champion General. So is it okay, first off?
Sure. What you miss, I will add. Keep in mind, I'm teaching the course on the history of the Byzantine state. But let's see. Yeah, go ahead. I'll let you do it. By the way, before you do, get this book. Let me hold on. Oh, there's a couple of things in the chat.
We can't see it.
Okay, yeah, I know. Hold on. My background. I recommend this book highly. I use this in my patristics course, The Feasts of the Mother of God. It is written by Metropolitan Hierotheos. He's a Greek bishop, PhD, and a psychologist. He's a psychotherapist as well as a theologian and a metropolitan of the Church of Greece. This book is excellent. It goes through all of the feasts of the Mother of God, and it also talks about the various epithets that you were talking about, Oriole, like Champion General. It goes into her various other descriptions, where all the information comes for a lot of the feasts of the Mother of God that we don't see in Scripture in the four Gospels, the Gospel of James, so it goes into the deuterocanonical texts. But it's really, really, it's a pretty voluminous text, and it's a really, really excellent book that will answer any question you have pretty much about her. Extremely orthodox in his position. Um, I mean, this is someone who would, Metropolitan Erotheos, I had met. He is a phenomenal pastor and a phenomenal theologian. He runs circles around all the American Orthodox theologians. He's really something else. So if you ever, if you want to get this book, I think it's like $20. You might want to look on Amazon, but it's really worth having in your library. So go ahead. Go ahead, Patrick.
Um, so the Kontakion of O Champion General We Your City, so on and so forth. It originates from 626 in the siege of a combined force of Slavs, Avars, and Persians attacked Constantinople when Heraclius was off deep in Persia fighting Khosrow, and Patriarch Sergius was in charge while he was gone, and he led the defense of the city. And they took the Hagiatoria out of the Hagia Sophia and paraded all around the town because they knew that there was a good chance that they were toast and the Theotokos saved the city through her intercessions. And that's why they wrote the Kontakion. It came from 626 in the Avar Wars.
Yep. And actually the hymn itself, O Champion General, that we normally sing during the small compline and the Akathist services on the Fridays of Lent, those the hymn actually was written, but then there was so the Kondakion is just one hymn, but a Kondakion is actually it has a lot of other stanzas and verses that kind of created the content for the salutation service that we do. So all of those Kondakia and Iki, and I know I'm probably confusing you at this point, the Kondaki and the Iki are just it's a poetic sermon, basically, is what it is. It's a musical sermon, poetic sermon, and it just adds more kind of epithets to the Theotokos. But champion general was like the Byzantine form of addressing her because the Byzantine Church and the Orthodox people were preserved, believed by her, as Patrick said, with her intercessions. So they use that term to talk about, her merits. She has more epithets, more descriptive titles than even Christ does, believe it or not, in the church. She has many, many, many. She's called the unconsumed bush, the flower, the rose that never withers, the ladder between heaven and earth. I mean, all of these because of her role in the incarnation. I mean, we cannot understand Mary apart from her role in the incarnation. That's why she's hardly ever depicted by herself. She's always depicted with Christ as a young child or as an infant, having given birth to him. She's never, never shown by herself because by herself, as someone created in God's image, uh, she's special. But what makes her the Theotokos is the fact that she gave birth to God. She gave birth to Christ. So, but all right. So I guess, yeah, we're done. So again, some of you have homework to do, so please let me know if you're ready. Again, your saint and your godparent. And if I don't hear from you, I'll be reaching out probably by the end of the week. Some of you I know already. You've shared with me, your information. But send it to me anyway. Let me know anyway. I just want to make sure I confirm from everyone. And um, our next meeting will be, let me give you I'll send out a Survey Monkey again. It will be the the fourth week of September, week of the 20th. 21st is a Monday, so we'll do it that week. And then we will have one more meeting before October 18th with your godparents so that we can go over the logistics for the baptism or chrismation, whatever you're having done. Okay. All right. Thank you all very much. And I will make this available to the recording so you can refer to it. God bless and have a good night. Good to see everyone.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Good night.
Night, everybody. Thank you, Father.